Hi, Darren. Just checking that you can hear me okay.
I can, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, it's not letting me start the video for some reason. Nope, there we go.
Thanks, Darren. Got you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 22nd of August. We'll start with the opening affirmation and acknowledgement of country. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all. We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay our respect to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Item 3, conflict of interest declarations received by the chair and disclosure of political donations. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor King. No conflict of interest declarations received. And just a brief disclosure of political donations and requirements of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act. The Act under Section 10.4 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of the council. Reportable political donations include those of above $1,000. There are no development applications at this meeting, so there ends the advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Item CM4, apologies. There are none. CM2, attendance by councillors at meeting by audio-visual link. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that council receives, note and accept the attendance by Councillor Cameron by audio link in bracket Zoom for the meeting.
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Happy to second the motion.
As this is procedural, happy to put the motion, Councillor Bowen.
Yes.
In that case, we'll put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you. CM5, mayoral minute. There is no mayoral minute. CM6, action plans. Apologies, Councillor Bowen.
I'd like to move that the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response for external parties. 3, actions in progress. And 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Bowen, do you wish to speak to the motion at all?
I'm happy to put that through.
Put through. If there's
Yes, thank you.
no questions or comments, happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. CM7, confirmation of minutes of the previous meetings. So CM 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 8th of August, 2022 at 6:12 p.m. Councillor Bettridge.
Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 8th of August, 2022 at 6:12 p.m. be confirmed.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. As this is a procedural motion, happy to put the motion. Thank you. Put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you. CM8, reports from community forums. There are none. Notices of motion, notices of rescission. Item 9, there is none. Item 10, presentations and deputations. There are none. CM11, reports or minutes of committees and working parties. CM 11.1, Albury Aquatic Facilities Advisory Committee minutes, the 3rd of August of 2022. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Albury Aquatic Facilities Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, 3 August 2022.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to open debate?
No.
Speak to the motion, sorry.
Thank you. We're receiving the minutes unless anyone has any questions. That's fine.
Councillors, any questions or comments? In that case, happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 12, documents for sealing. There are none. CM 13, officers' reports for consideration. CM 13.1, the 2022 LGNSW annual conference motions. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council endorse the following motions be submitted to LGNSW for consideration for inclusion in the 2022 LGNSW annual conference business paper. 1, that LGNSW advocate to the New South Wales Government to develop a holistic inland water safety strategy for New South Wales that includes specific reference to cohorts of the community who are at high risk of drowning. 2, that LGNSW calls on the New South Wales Government to enact legislation that gives councils more power to regulate and control cats in their LGAs. 3, that LGNSW advocates that the New South Wales Government develop strategies to reduce and ultimately eliminate the provision of reticulated natural gas supply to new residential developments in New South Wales. 4, that LGNSW advocates the New South Wales Government to amend TCorp investment policy requirements to enable council to support local banking institutions and reinvestment in local communities. 5, that LGNSW calls on the New South Wales Government to improve the capacity and quality of health services and infrastructure in regional New South Wales to meet growing community demand. 6, that LGNSW calls on the New South Wales Government to fast-track changes to policy and legislation that prohibits the use of e-scooters as a means of active transport on our pathways, streets and roads.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. Happy to second the motion.
Councillor Thurley initially, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King, I will. I won't speak to every one of them. Other councillors have a significant interest in the crafting of these motions. 2 that I would like to talk about. The Companions Animals Act regulates dogs very heavily in our community, and as we would all expect. However, it ties council's hands behind their back with regard to cats. Cats roam the streets day and night, and we have no powers to do anything about it other than talk to the owner and suggest that they might do something about it. I have a fully native garden. I pick dead birds out of my front garden, not frequently, but often enough. And while I have tried to talk to the neighbours about their cats, nothing happens. And cats really are a tremendous pest, not only native birds, but rodents, native small animals. Cats roam far and wide. Some study that I saw show that cats can cover about 2 hectares in a night in their territory, and that's out hunting. So that's one that I believe the New South Wales government needs to look seriously at and amend the Companion Animals Act to give councils greater power. The other one, of course, and we've had this one before, the investment policy, where the government tried to impose restrictions on councils that if we borrowed money from lower rated institutions such as the Hume Bank or WAW, we would not be eligible for lower interest loans from T Corp. This really is unconscionable behaviour. These are small local businesses. Hume Bank started off as a building society, and they need to be supported by the community. And especially when you look at the way banking's going these days, someone told me that Bendigo is basically almost bankless, and Lavington certainly is at the moment. So I think that we need something better from the government with regard to our investment so that we can properly support WAW and Hume Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Glacken.
Yes, a question, if I may, through you to the most relevant member of staff. With reference to number 3, the reticulated natural gas supply, how do we sit with the introduction of hydrogen as one of the components that is being used to supplement what is otherwise the natural gas supply? And my understanding is that it's going to be supplemented in increasing amounts. And we also have being built as part of Albury Wodonga, a hydrogen factory, for want of a better word. So how do we sit with that medium to longer term? I understand the short term issues and concerns raised by the councillors, but what about medium to longer term with, in particular, hydrogen and any other opportunities?
Mr. Ferris.
Through you, Mayor King, certainly the introduction of hydrogen is consistent with recommendation 3, so that ultimately eliminate the provision of natural gas. So certainly hydrogen, or a shandied version of hydrogen, as we're seeing introduced across the nation at the moment, is consistent with reducing our dependency on the natural gas supply.
A follow-up question, Councillor Glacken.
Yes, if I may, can we make that perhaps more clear in our submission to Local Government New South Wales, so that they don't think that we're trying to take out stop the installation of pipes, etc., of natural gas, but that we are encouraging the perhaps increase propensity towards replacement substitutes such as hydrogen, or the shandying of hydrogen and the greater percentage of. Might that be possible?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thanks for the question. We can certainly include that in the notes to the motion based on the that transition to hydrogen as part of the gas supply going forward.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through you to the relevant member of staff. Is the infrastructure for gas different and separate to infrastructure required for hydrogen?
Mr. Ferris.
You, Mayor King, certainly there will be some differences along the way. I think as hydrogen becomes more available, different methods of delivery of that will be part. But my understanding at the moment, the shandying trials that are happening around the country are using this existing infrastructure.
Councillor Edwards, is there another follow-up?
Yeah, just speaking for the motion as written, I think that it's too early to start talking about hydrogen, particularly when they're only at a trial stage. And I think that we need more trial results before we start talking about putting in hydrogen infrastructure. We have lots of opportunities for alternative energy that exist now that don't need trials. We know how they work, we know how much they cost, and they're getting cheaper. I don't think we need to be concerned about putting in more pipes, which costs more money. I think, I think that the motion should stay as it is and doesn't need to be confused by adding in hydrogen into the mix.
Councillors, any other comments? Questions in relation to that? Councillor Thurley, to sum up, if there's no further questions or debate. Happy to put the motion as it stands. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item CM 13.2, Draft Albury City Advocacy Strategy. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A endorse the draft Albury City. Actually, I wanted to move an alternative motion.
Sorry. We'll just wait for that to come up
Can't
for
remember if
you.
the first bit. Thank you. I move that Council A endorse the draft Albury City Advocacy Strategy for public exhibition for 28 days with the following amendments. 1, classify Achieving Net Zero, page 17, and the Goonawillinga Structure Plan, page 21, as Tier 2, and B, adopt the Albury City Advocacy Strategy if no submissions are received during the public exhibition period.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm happy to support the draft advocacy strategy for public comment as recommended, particularly the items around advocacy for better health facilities on the border. However, I believe that this small adjustment from Tier 3 to Tier 2 for achieving net zero and the Goonawillinga Structure Plan was required to give the focus that they deserve as projects of city and region-wide importance, and projects that will bring multiple benefits to the residents of Albury.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Callaghan wishes to speak for the motion.
Thank you, Mayor King. Yes, I do. I think the plan itself is advocacy is all about building partnerships and avenues where community voice and aspirations are heard and actioned. On all council matters, we aim to share community vision and deliver outcomes for a brighter future as we strive towards the plans for 2050. I think when we all campaigned, we all made commitments, and I believe these collectively are reflected in the advocacy strategy. And now is another opportunity for Albury to have its say on how we represent them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Any other speakers for or against, or questions? Councillor Edwards, do you wish to sum up debate?
No, thank you, Mickey.
In that case, happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 13.3, Albury City's Corporate Success Pillar Measures and Targets. We have a councillor happy to put the motion. Councillor Thurley.
Mayor King, I move that Council A receives and notes the Albury City Corporate Success Pillars 2021-22 available results. B, endorses the Albury City 2022-23 Corporate Success Pillars measures and targets. And C, receives and notes the quarterly Corporate Success Pillar scorecard, June 2022.
Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to this at all?
There's a question if I'm happy to accept the question first.
Okay. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I just have a question regarding page 2, that the artist be noted and acknowledged in this document, which is Tisha Maxi Mao McGuinness. I hope I've done her justice in pronouncing her name, but also hoping that acknowledgement in further documentation if her artwork is to be used. Would that be possible? Thank you.
Yes.
Didn't have time to get there quick enough. Mr. CEO, the answer is yes, for your reference. Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak?
Very briefly. I like the idea that we've set out how we'll measure our success. Often the way success is measured is far too vague, and here we've given ourselves a number of clearly defined measures, and I commend the staff on the quality of this work.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Does any other councillors wish to speak to the motion or have a question? Councillor Thurley, happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM 13.4, revised 2 cities, 1 community partnership agreement. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, To move the recommendation as a motion that council endorse the revised 2 cities, 1 community partnership agreement.
Councillor Betteridge,
Thank you, Mayor King. Happy to second.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, the 2 cities, 1 community partnership is something that we've been working towards over decades. It became something more official in the last decade, but it's important to note that it's an opportunity for us as the 2 councils and the 2 cities to be able to work together to create the biggest bang for our buck and the greatest opportunity for our community to reach goals that we would standing alone not necessarily be able to achieve. And it's great to see articulated that ongoing effort made really by the staff on an ongoing and a continual basis to ensure that we do achieve more for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Speaker 4, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd just like to note that our highest strategic priority by both councils was health service and advocacy. And I think in light of what's been transpiring over the past 6 months with our health system, I think it's important to note that we want to work collaboratively for the best outcomes of our community. Whether the hospital ends up in Albury or Wodonga, we want the best services for everyone. And that's not a debate. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Glacken, do you wish to sum up debate? In that case, we'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. CM 13.5, Review Alcohol-Free Zones and Alcohol Prohibited Areas 2022. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you through you to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A receives and notes the alcohol-free zones and alcohol prohibited areas review 2022. B proceeds to the public exhibition for the period of 30 days for the establishment of the proposed alcohol-free zones and alcohol prohibited areas, providing a further report to Council on public submissions received. C, in the event of no submissions are received during the public exhibition period, adopt the proposed establishment of the alcohol-free zones and alcohol permitted areas for the period of 4 years. And if adopted, informs the relevant police local area district command, affected liquor licenses and the other organisations advised in the original proposal of the adoption of the resolution. Thank you.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. The alcohol-free zones and the alcohol prohibitive areas are slightly different and used for different reasons. They are, however, a very important part of what we work in conjunction with the police to be able to provide safer and more community-focused areas at different times during the year. For example, some of them are for specific periods such as the Australia Day celebrations. We are making a number of changes which include the addition of some spaces to these zones, but also taking some spaces out of the zone. So it's good that we have been able to undertake a thorough review, as we always do, and realistically look at what areas do need assistance and what areas no longer have what we call an issue, or what we would believe to be an issue. So I support the document and the recommendation here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. A question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm speaking for the motion, but I would also like to ask a question to the most relevant staff member, please. I would like to note that in the report from the police, some signage was obscure and bled into the parking signage, with people not being aware of those restrictions. So my question is, whilst there is signage located in alcohol-free and prohibited areas, can a review of this be completed to address if it's sufficient, and if the new areas and extensions are agreed to, that adequate signage is put in these areas to adequately inform citizens?
Ms. Squire, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through you. Yes, absolutely. That's certainly the intention, given that it's now been, I guess, brought to our attention that we need to review the signage. So we'll absolutely be doing that, as well as looking at the artwork that's provided.
Any follow-ups? Any questions? Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Gluckin, do you wish to close debate?
Yes, I would like to add that one of the significant areas that we are actually including is a memorial space on Young Street, the top end of Dean Street, known as the Nashos Memorial. And it's important to be able to include that space within the scope of this work because it is an area that needs to be respected by our community. And unfortunately, it's in a location that has not lent itself to that respect in the past, and this will assist with that. Thank you very much.
We'll now put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. CM 14, Officers' Reports for Noting. Item 14.1, Investment Balances, July 2022. Councillor Betteridge.
Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that Council receives and notes the investment balances report for the month of July 2022.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
A procedural motion, or do you wish to speak to it?
I believe it is a procedural motion and I
Happy
will
to put the motion.
defer speaking to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, comments or debate, councillors? In that case, we'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 14.2, Operational Plan Quarterly Progress Report. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move the council receives and notes the June Operational Plan Progress Report.
Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second Councillor Thurley's recommendation as a motion.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to open debate or make a comment?
I'd just really like to note that given these difficult times and every day we hear about shortages of labour, shortage of material supply, we seem to have done a pretty good job. I think it was 96% achievement of the plan. And that in these circumstances, I think the staff deserve a lot of credit for that.
Councillor Callaghan, speaking for the motion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to highlight three parts of the operational plan progress report. And one of those has been the work done out at Mungabarina, although you might not be able to access parts of Mungab at the moment with the flooding. I think some real effort and work went into maintaining that area with some bollards that have been put in. The CCT camera footage, remote trailer absolutely acted as a deterrent. It was disappointing to see people, once it was moved, revert back to tearing up the lawn. So hopefully some more positive things to come in that space. The other one was the public toilet strategy works. The completion of the detailed drawings. I think the public toilets at the Albury Skate Park will be a welcome addition in time. And the third one on page 33 I would like to highlight is the waste management construction, the MRF, so the material recovery facility, which will go to tender, a shed that will be built to house the processing plant. I think the material, diverting those materials from our landfill is a really positive move forward, and I think they should be commended. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Any other questions or comments, councillors? In that case, Councillor Thurley, do you wish to close debate or happy to put the motion? In that case, we'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 15, Delegates' Reports for Noting. There are none. Item 16, Notice of Urgent Business. Councillor Thurley, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor King. Councillors will recall that in 2018, a motion was passed saying that Albury was a refugee welcome city. And we have over the years since then welcomed plenty more Bhutanese people. And now we're seeing people from Africa, and it's a wonderful space to be in. I was approached over the weekend by a filmmaker who's made a film about some Afghani refugees, and she's made a film called Journey Beyond Fear. It's about some Afghan refugees who've now spent, I think, 10 years in Malaysia. Spent 10 years in Malaysia trying to get to Australia. The film will be shown on the 4th of September at the Regent Cinema at 4 p.m. And there, as with the Solstice film, there'll be a Q&A at the end of that, and they've asked me would I moderate that. So I have some little flyers here if anyone wants one. It's called Journey Beyond Fear, and subtitle A Story of Love and Survival. And I have spoken to the filmmaker and seen a brief preview, and I think it's something that we should really try and publicise in our community to get people listening on board with this business of refugees, because I don't think we've got all that good a record in many cases, and anything that can help us see the dilemma and the challenges these people face is something we should do. So I commend this to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Any comments or questions in relation to that in that case? Oh, Councillor Cameron, thank you, sorry.
I'd simply request, could Councillor Thurley take a picture of a flyer and send me, please? I'd love to see it.
Will do.
Thank you.
Will do, confirmed. Thank you, councillors. We're up to item 17, confidential matters. There are none. I declare tonight's council meeting closed at 6:31. Thank you, councillors.
See you in the next one.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Take care.
Yes.
Do I-